So I think you probably all got a pop-up saying that it's being streamed. And okay, we're ready to go.
Good morning and welcome to this Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I would like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public and that this hearing will be recorded and live streamed. The video recording will be our record of the hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll number 18249. The municipal address is 631 Silvertip Road in Canmore, Alberta. I will start by introducing the panel and ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for any comments. My name is Dale Hildebrand. I am the presiding chair appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are Michelle Ouellette and Martin Buckley. Does anyone have any objection to the panel as constituted? Mr. Ross?
No complaints at the moment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Welcome. Mr. Snellgrove?
No complaints. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant. Would you please state your name for the record, the organization, and your role in this hearing? And please indicate whether you are the owner of the property under complaint. Mr. Roth?
I'm acting on behalf of the property owner as their tax agent.
Okay, and could you please state your name and organization just for the record?
Of course. My name's Stephen Roth. I'm here on behalf of Altus Group.
Great, thank you very much. And now Mr. Snellgrove for the respondent. Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. I'm Christopher Snellgrove, representing Benchmark Assessment, who provides assessment services for the town of Canmore.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. The LARB standard practice is to have the complainant present all of their evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent and then the panel. Next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by questions from the complainant and the panel. The complainant will have the opportunity for rebuttal. Finally, at the end, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final arguments and summarize their evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first. If anyone needs a break or problems come up, please let the panel know as soon as possible and we can address things as we go. I would also like to take this time to remind everybody to please turn off your mobile devices. Any questions regarding the procedure as I've laid out here this morning?
Not on behalf of the complainant.
Great, thank you very much. I see both parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing. To save time, I propose that we mark these documents for the record now. That won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility later. If any such questions arise, we can still deal with them and strike material from the record later if necessary. Is everybody comfortable with this procedure?
Yeah.
Seeing nodded heads.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Can I please ask the clerk to read the evidence in and assign exhibit numbers?
Absolutely. So we have the original complaint form from the complainant, which was 4 pages, and that will be labeled as C1. We have the complainant disclosure package of 172 pages that will be labeled C2. We have the respondent disclosure package of 52 pages, and that will be R1. And then we have the complainant rebuttal package of 107 pages, and that will be C3.
Great, thank you very much. We will.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
course.
To the clerk, going back to the original 4 pages of C1, the assessment review board complaint, the
Yep.
property assessment notice, and the issues and grounds from Alpha Group. I noticed those pages aren't numbered. If I wanted to reference them later on during questions, how would I reference them?
Right.
If I may, on
Yep.
page 10 of C2 would be, I believe, one of the pages you're looking for, which is our issues and grounds, which would have been filed in the initial complaint.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm happy with that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think because there's only 4 pages, we could just reference them, pages 1, 2, 3, 4. Great, thank you, Mr. Buckley, for pointing that out. All right, now we'll move along. Any preliminary issues? Any preliminary issues you'd like to discuss with the panel? I'll start with you first, Mr. Roth.
None on behalf of the complainant. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Snowgrove?
No, I have no preliminary issues either. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. All right, Mr. Roth, we're ready to hear your evidence. If you're set to proceed, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. We'll begin on C2, please. And if we could begin on page 12, that's page 12 of C2, please.
Good. As we go along, I'm just going to assume that everybody's following, and if any of the panel members need more time, just speak up. Please go ahead at your convenience, Mr. Roth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So on page 12 here, this is our summary of testimony. This is everything that we'll be discussing today in this evidence package specifically. At the top there, we can see the roll number 18250, address 631 Silvertip Road in Canmore. The issues of appeal are the assessment is inequitable with similar and competing properties. The assessed rate per square foot is in excess. The ASRs of the comparable properties are well outside the accepted standardized range. Altus will present sales in Canmore that support a reduction to the overall rate per square foot. The sales of similar and competing properties are all within the same vicinity and show a median of $780 per square foot. In addition, the ASRs for the properties are well above the accepted standardized range of 0.95 to 1.05. And if we could continue to page 16, please. On page 16, this is the assessment report for the subject property that we're speaking about today. And if we could continue to page 17, please. A couple of exterior photos of the subject property. And on page 18, we have our requested assessed value. We are requesting $2,318,160 for a dollar per square foot of $780. And if we could continue on to page 20, please. On page 20, we have the GIS overhead photo and information from the municipality, and then also a satellite image showing the property lines in red there. And then on page 21, please. On page 21, what we have here are 5 sales that we've used to determine that the median price of comparable properties is $780 per square foot. We have the close date there for all of the sales, as well as the sale price and assessment price, showing a median ASR of 128%. Again, outside of that 0.95 to that 1.05. If we could continue to page 22, please. From
Just-
that tape,
Sorry,
Sorry.
Mr. Rollins, just for clarity, the assessment price is 2022.
that's correct.
Thank you.
On page 22, we have out of that list on page 21, we're going to go in from top to bottom here. So we have 133 Silvertip Ridge here, again, GIS and an exterior photo. I would like to mention, and I guess additionally, I forgot to mention that Altus, although has its requested value in my rebuttal package, which I will present later, we do have an alternative requested assessment amount that I will go over just so everyone's aware. And then also regarding these properties, we do have extensive more photos and rebuttal as well to support the quality of these. So we do have the overhead and then a street view photo of here showing the ASR and the square footage for the 133. And then if we could continue on to page 22, please. Or I guess it's, yeah, 22. We have the MLS report for the 133 Silvertip Ridge in Canmore, showing the sale price, the sale date, the realtor remarks on the property, and all the features that are associated with the property. And on page 25, this is where the assessment that you referred to earlier, Mr. Chairman, this is where the assessed amount has come from, which is the assessment search provided by the municipality on their municipal website. And on page 26, please, again, going down and from top to bottom, this is 537 Silvertip Road. Again, showing an ASR of 1.14, $880 per square foot. Again, overhead, and then just a quick street view photo of that one. And continuing on to page 27, this is the MLS information related to that property with the sale date, again, the realtor comments and all the features associated with that home. And again, on 29, just showing where the assessed amount came from, again, from the municipal website there. And on page 30, we have 613 Silvertip Road at a $780 per square foot for an ASR of 1.30. And on page 31, we have the MLS listing for that as well. Again, same remarks from the realtor and features. And on page 33, the municipal website's assessment search for that property. And on page 34, this is 808 Silvertip Heights at $895 per square foot for a 1.14 ASR. And on page 35, again, the same MLS information as the previous ones. And on page 37, we have the tax information from the municipality, or excuse me, the assessment information. And on page 38, this is 117 Stone Creek Place, which is $595 per square foot with an ASR of 1.06. And again, on page 39, the relevant MLS listing information there as well. And on page 41, we have the assessment information or assessment price from the municipality assessment search. And on page 42, we have the requested assessed amount, again, that $2,318,160. That's $780 per square foot. Based off the information above, we believe that the ASRs are too high from an assessment to sales perspective. We believe that the subject is either the same quality as our comparables or inferior to the sales brought forward in this evidence package. And thank you for the time to present our initial evidence, and welcome any questions from the board or the respondent. Thank you.
Ms. Olet, do you have any questions on C1, C2?
I have no,
I don't have any questions, Dale, at this time.
Okay. And Mr. Buckley?
no questions. Thank you.
Again, I just want to confirm, I haven't grabbed my calculator yet. The ASRs that you're quoting, that's the sales price at the time of the sale and using the 2022 assessed values to come up with those ratios. Sorry, you're muted, Mr. Roth.
Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, so exactly. So the way, as you know, the assessment's always for the prior year, and we've used the 2023, but it's 2022.
Okay, then, no further questions. We'll move on to the respondent's evidence. Mr. Snellgrove, would you like to proceed, please?
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see here. Okay, so let's start on page 3 of our document there. We'll go through some of the processes of assessment here, and we'll demonstrate the assessments must be prepared on an annual basis. The valuation standard for the subject property is the market value, and the assessor must prepare assessments in a fair and equitable manner. So page 4 is our photograph of the subject property there. And then page 5 shows an aerial location, how it's situated in the neighborhood. And then the following page is the image overlay showing it in adjacency to that golf course there. That's page 6. Okay. Page 7 is just a summary of the details of the property. You can see there the classification we have on this building under improvement valuations on page 7. There is a 2-story and a basement with an attached garage. So that's the type of property that we're trying to value here. The lot size at the top is 12,125 square feet. Okay, on page 8.
Just for clarity, Mr. Snellgrove, that's
Sure.
2972 is above grade.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so page 8, property assessments for the town of Canmore are prepared in accordance with the requirements of the Municipal Government Act, hereinafter referred to as the MGA, and the matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation. Afterwards, we'll call that just the MRAT. The MRAT regulation establishes the valuation standard to be used, defines the procedures to be applied, and defines objectives for the quality to be achieved in the preparation of assessments. The legislation requires the municipality to prepare assessments that represent market value by application of the mass appraisal process. All assessments are expected to meet quality standards prescribed by the province in the MRAT regulation. So basically we're saying that we have these standards and rules that we have to abide by, and the province holds us to that. First of all, market value. The legislation requires that assessments be prepared on market value. Market value means the amount that a property might be expected to realize if it is sold on the open market to a willing seller, to a willing buyer. Property assessments for the 2022 assessment year must be an estimate of the value of property on July 1st, 2022, which is our valuation date, and then reflect the physical condition of the property as of December 31st. That's the condition date. The legislation further stipulates that an assessment of property based on market value must be prepared using mass appraisal. It must be an estimate of the value of the fee simple estate in the property and must reflect typical market conditions for properties similar to that property. Mass appraisal is the legislated methodology used for valuing individual properties and involves the following process. Properties are stratified into groups of comparable properties. So we can compare apples to apples, basically, not apples to oranges. Common property characteristics are identified for the properties in each group. And the next page, a uniform valuation model is created for each property group. The International Association of Assessing Officers distinguishes between mass appraisal and single property appraisal. Single property appraisal is the valuation of a particular property as of a given date. Mass appraisal is the valuation of many properties as of a given date using standard procedures and statistical testing. Also, mass appraisal requires standardized procedures across many properties. Thus, valuation models developed for mass appraisal purposes must represent supply and demand patterns for groups of properties rather than a single property. The highest and best use, a principle of appraisal and assessment requiring that each property be appraised as though it were being put to its most profitable use. This principle entails first identifying the most appropriate market and second, the most profitable use within that market. The valuation process for assessing residential properties. Properties in Town of Canmore are determined using the direct sales comparison approach. This approach best reflects the typical actions of buyers and sellers when purchasing residential properties and mirrors the actions of market participants when making their purchase decision. Sales information is received from the land titles office, and then the sales are validated. Validation may include site inspections, interviews with involved parties, a review of land title documents, corporate searches, etc. The resulting validated sales are used to develop valuation models to replicate market behavior. The sale price reflects the condition of a property on the sale date and may not be equal to the assessed value. With the 2022 valuation of residential properties, sales occurring from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2022 were analyzed. Those are key dates, and I'll be referring to them multiple times here. So, time adjusted sale prices. The Town of Canmore reviewed sales occurring from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2022 for the 2022 valuation of residential properties. Time adjustments are applied to sale prices to account for any market fluctuations occurring between the sale date and the legislated valuation date of July 1st, 2022. So we started at the beginning of that July 1st, 2019 period, and then the cutoff date is June 30th of 2022. And that inflation that occurs, or deflation, we have to reflect, we have to adjust our sales to reflect whatever those changes are, up or down, whatever. According to the 2022 Recording and Reporting Information Assessment Audit and Equalized Assessment Manual, this is written by the people that audit our work, so the provincial auditors. They say it's a very effective way to increase sample size for a ratio study is to use older time adjusted sales. Given that the sales period ends on June 30th of the assessment year and the statutory evaluation date is July 1st, all sales should be analyzed for time adjustments and adjusted accordingly. Now, Town of Canmore and other popular areas have seen significant growth, inflation over that 3-year trend. Not every municipality has had the same degree of growth or inflation, but in this case, we've seen significant changes from the beginning of that period to the end. Effective year built. The effective year built is the age of a house adjusted for additions and renovations, or the age of the foundation, when the blending of the original area with the new area is required. So if it was built in 2008 and then they replaced the shingles or the roof, you could expect it to last another 10 years or whatever. So that's what effective year built means. Okay, page 11 there. The direct sales comparison approach is used in the preparation of residential property assessments in the town of Canmore. This approach was applied to the subject property for the 2022 assessment rule to produce the assessment of $3,510,000. The property characteristics were confirmed by the assessor based on an interior inspection with the property owner on May 17th, 2023. The calculation of the 2022 assessment, the 2022 assessment year, 2023 tax year, is demonstrated below. So you can see the size of the building, the location influence being in proximity to the golf course. These all come into play when we're setting these values. Then the area of the house, expensive 2-story and a basement. It shows the details of the house, the number of bathrooms, the basement finish, and so on. And then at the bottom is the attached garage of 567 square feet. Okay, so page 12. Each property in a municipality must be assessed on an annual basis. Section 285 of the MGA states as follows: each municipality must prepare annually an assessment for each property in the municipality, except designated industrial property. Okay, so this framework has been tested by other boards in the courts. There's just a decision there, John Nguyen versus the City of Edmonton. Assessments are created anew every year and tested on an overall statistical basis by the province to ensure that the regulated assessment quality standards have been met. An assessment from 1 year is not and should not be merely modified to become the subsequent year's assessment. Assessments are not based on previous year's assessments for a variety of reasons. The market value of properties fluctuates within a given municipality from one neighborhood to another, from one structure to another, from one type of property to another. The proportional change in assessment may not be consistent across a municipality or even a neighborhood. Okay, there's another decision here. The court confirmed that neither a prior year's board decision nor a prior year's assessment is a starting point or base for a following year's assessment. So we're pointing that out because we're not bound by the previous year's value or anything. We always have to start over based on the new information we have. The property details may not change, but the information the standards we're holding it to do change. Okay, more recently in Calgary, LARB decision, LARB 1668227M-2022, the board commented on prior board decisions and reinforced that assessments are annual and not bound by prior year decisions. We'll just move on from there for a bit. Page 13. So in the case of the subject property here, the complainant has not provided any evidence regarding the prior complaint hearing other than to indicate the assessor should be bound by the comparables cited in this decision. Well, let's go down to the units of comparison there. In the sales comparison approach, appraisers estimate a price per unit. The unit of comparison may be the property as a whole or some smaller measure of the size of property. Converting the sale price to a price per unit makes it easier to compare and adjust properties that compete in the same market. In addition to the entire property, common units of comparison for the sales comparison approach are square feet of gross building area. The price per unit is the dependent variable. what is being estimated in the valuation model. So we're going for a price per unit here. The value of the dependent variable is predicted by or depends on the value of other variables such as property attributes like more or less bathrooms, basement finish, and that sort of thing. The unit of comparison should never be the grounds for selecting comparables. Property attributes should be used instead. Okay, and there's just a decision there that also supports that methodology. But we'll move on to the following page, page 15. These are the sales, some excellent sales comparables that are in the vicinity of the subject property. The direct sales comparison approach was utilized in the preparation of residential assessments for 2022. From sales from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2022 were analyzed and used in the preparation of the assessments. Below are the sales of the same quality of construction and finishing, 2-story with basement homes in the same neighborhood as the subject property. So if you look at the first comparable there, you can see its address, its roll number, the assessment, the lot area, slightly smaller than the subject at 8,541 square feet. It was built in 2007. It has 2,539 square feet, and the sale date was in 2019. Now the following number is the adjusted sale price. So this sale price, the actual sale price is to the right of that, but the adjusted sale price has been adjusted for the inflation that occurred over that 3-year period. And that column, those numbers are the ones that the province holds us to. So this is our standard. We have to reflect that number. So you can see this sold for $2,525,000 in 2019, and its time adjusted sale price is $3,326,900. The following one is probably the closest in size of land size as well as building size, but it is older to the subject property. Lot size 11,595, built in 2007. But about the same square feet. It sold in 2021 for $3,200,000, which the adjusted sale price for that is $3,956,800. The following sale, a little smaller than the subject property, also 2007. The third sale rather, 14,634, slightly larger, but a 2004 home and slightly larger square footage. It sold for $3.5 million in 2020. That sale price has been adjusted to $4,581,500. The fourth and final one, slightly smaller, 10,000 square feet, built in 2007 at 2,571 square feet, sold in 2021. Time adjusted sale price $3,078,400. The following page is a nice aerial image showing the proximity of each of those comparables to the subject property being in red. These are all very strong comparables, all within the same neighborhood, very similar proximity to this golf course influence. They're very strong comparables. Are there any questions about the time adjusted so far, what's gone on here and why these sales matter? Anybody? No? Okay.
I think we're following along, Mr. Snellgrove. Keep going.
Okay, thank you. All right, so page 17, we're looking at the sales comparables provided by the complainant. Below are the properties referenced as comparable properties to the subject property provided by the complainant, except for the property at 808 Silvertip Heights, which is also one of our comparables. The properties provided by the complainant are all lower quality of construction and finishes, older and smaller than the subject property. Differences in assessed values are attributable to differences in the property characteristics themselves. So if you look at those sales, the very first one, older, smaller parcel size, pretty similar floor size. Its sale price $1,749,000. In their disclosure, they did not time adjust their sales like we have to, So we have included to the left of that what those sale prices would be on a time adjusted, using our time adjustment. And the ASR, the assessment to sales ratio, this is how we measure how far off we are on our assessments. You divide the assessed value by the sales and come up with that ratio, and that's what that means, and we are using the adjusted sale prices for our ASR. So it's very important to know, because we have to meet that province with that standard with the province. That's the level of excellence we're held to. So the other differences that come into play here, if you look at the final column, is the quality rating placed on each of those homes. So the subject there at the top is in what we call expensive quality, and that 808 Silvertip Heights is also in that expensive quality rating. The other 4 are in custom quality ratings or good custom quality ratings. So this goes back to us trying to compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. These come into play as far as the rating system goes on each property. Following is on page 18 is a map showing the locations of those properties. So they are within the same vicinity, so that's good. And then page 19, in summary, based on the evidence provided by the assessor submits that the comparable properties provided the complainant are not similar to the subject property, partly from those quality ratings. Further, the analysis provided from the complainant did not adhere to appraisal best practice. The town of Canmore experienced a 22.1 average residential assessment increase over the last year, and to use sales as far back as 2019 without adjusting for the increases in the market over that time period does not reflect the market conditions of July 1st, 2022. The assessor feels that the comparable sales provided to the board by the respondent support the assessed value, and respectfully submits that the property assessment for the subject property is both correct and equitable with other properties in the town of Canmore, and asks that the assessment review board confirm the assessment at $3,510,000.
Great, thank you, Mr. Snellgrove. Any questions, Ms. Oled?
I just am curious from the assessor, why is there such a variation based on the 2 different sets of comparables?
That's a good question. I think the main differences would be partly those quality ratings, but these also may not be 2 stories with basements. That's all the comparables we've provided are 2 stories with basements. So, that's comparing that apples to apples. There might be a 3rd story involved in some of these, or less than that even. It's not really specified in there. So the comparables we did provide are all 2 stories with basements.
Okay, thank you. I guess that's a good question for the complainant.
Sorry, question for me?
We'll come back to you, Mr. Roth.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dale.
When you're doing your rebuttal, for sure. Mr. Buckley?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Snellgrove, I've been looking at pages 27 through 44, which is the property and sales information for the respondents' comparables. And I noticed the qualities, I think, as you're talking about. There's custom, there's expensive, there's custom, there's semi-custom. what's the other one? Good custom. How are these characteristics determined? What makes a good custom different from a custom? What makes a semi-custom different from a good custom, etc.? How do you determine these things?
Okay, that's a good question. It's kind of a judgment call on the assessor when they're looking at the materials or from looking at the blueprints or so forth. But a custom class 8 quality rating would be represent a house that is exceeds the market standards for that era. It may have been a contract built home, has a attractive like exterior. Good custom would be it significantly exceeded the market standards for that era. You know, it may have been contracted under the supervision of an architect. And then the expensive quality rating would be it's unique housing that significantly exceeds the market standards for the area. It may have been under the contract supervision of an architect, you know, so it's higher quality materials, design, and those type of features. And it goes the other way too. If fair condition, poor condition, average condition, and good, you know, these are the upper ends of the quality ratings. But all properties, we when we re-inspect them, we do a quality rating on them. And, you know, maybe they've been replaced since the time they were built with something better. So sometimes they vary situationally. Does that answer your question?
It does, and just to be very clear, and to a question I'm sure I know the answer for, and just wanting to confirm this. High-priced appliances don't factor into this sort of thing. It's strictly the structural and building itself.
That's correct. Appliances and things like that are movable, we call those chattels. And you know, you could pack them up with you when you move out of that house. So we don't include those. No.
Yes, I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Mr. Stelgo, the 22.1, I think, % increase from 2021 to 2022, was that an average assessment for all of Canmore? And was that all housing types or just residential? What is that statistic?
Typically, what we do is we'll measure what the improved residential is doing in comparison to vacant residential over that 3-year trend. Sometimes they're similar and sometimes they're quite different. We also look into the non-res, how are they selling over that 3-year period? So the province does hold us to that standard. You know, they'll want to know, are you adjusting for the non-res and is that different for the res? You know, so more often than not, the percentages are different for res versus non-res, but that represents all of the residential sales of all types of properties in Canmore over the 3-year trend.
Okay, so I'm just a little bit confused. I'm on page 19 of R1. It says the town of Canmore experienced a 22.1% average residential assessment increase over the last year. And to use sales as far back as 2019, without adjusting for increases in the market over that time period, does not reflect the market conditions as of July 1, 2022. So is the 22.1% the average residential increase over the last year, or is it? I don't understand the second part of that sentence.
Okay, yeah, that's a bit confusing. It is derived over the 3-year trend, but it was applied last year for this 2022 period. That's the amount that was applied, you know.
Okay, so the 22% increase is really over the 3-year period, and average 7 point something % per year kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then just a follow-up question on the quality. As I'm sure you're aware, in Canmore, we have a proliferation of timber frame homes or what I call fake timber frame homes, where we have a lot of, wood beams, etc. on the interior, but they're cosmetic versus structural. Where do you slot homes with timber frame or fake timber frame into your custom, semi-custom categories?
Well, I guess that's situational, but probably the one that would be require an engineer or an architect to, withstand the weight of the structure would be in that more in the luxury end, whereas the cosmetic type stuff may appear nice, but probably not have the same initial cost. But yeah.
Okay, and how do you know whether a home that was built a decade ago or more actually had an engineer or architect involved in the construction?
Typically, we get our dimensions right from the blueprints when we get at the time of the construction. Sometimes there's obviously errors in the data, but in general, if we're able to do it the way we like, we're able to look at the blueprints and start on the right foot, knowing a lot of those details. If there's, say, an elevator in the home, that's an expensive design feature that would be, probably require some significant additional cost to, and it's more of a luxury item. Not every house would have that type of thing, right?
Okay, so just to make sure I understand then, as homes are built in Canmore, the building permit information would come to the assessor of the day, and they would put it in their database, noting those features, elevator, architect, engineer, those kind of things, and that consistency, I guess, in quality is dependent on who did it at the time, but hopefully there's some guidelines and try and get some consistency. Is that understanding? Am I understanding that better now?
That's right. And we constantly try to review our data. As properties sell, we do follow these listings. We do compare our data to what's available, as well as reinspection cycles to try to make sure the stuff is correct. But yeah, that's correct. That's the process in general.
Great. Thank you for.
I think you're muted there.
Sorry, yeah, a little too quick on the button there. Now move on to the complaints, rebuttal evidence. Mr. Roth.
If I may, I do have a couple of questions arising, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you.
And I believe Mr. Snellgrove didn't have an opportunity to ask questions on my initial submission, and I'd like to offer him any questions he may have regarding my evidence before I ask him any questions.
Thank you, Stefan. I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, just wanted to offer you that opportunity. If we could turn to page, I guess just on page 4, this seems to be the only photo realistically outside of the maps and then the small square photos on either the assessment or on the assessments for each of these properties. Is that correct?
That's all we have included, I believe. Yes.
Okay. So when we talk about quality, and particularly I see that on page 11, it mentions that you've done an site inspection, including an interior site inspection. When we're talking about quality, I agree, apples to apples, oranges to oranges, 100%. Would it not be useful for either the complainant, the property owner, and the board to determine quality if those photos were presented like today?
Not sure what you're asking there. Can you be more specific?
Yeah, of course. So you've done a site inspection, correct? It says
Yep.
that May 17th site inspection. We're in part of the reason why we're here today is the argument between the difference of quality between my comparables and the subject and your comparables and the subject. That's a fair representation?
Yes.
would it not be useful for these photos of the site inspection to be present or to be included in your evidence? Would that not be a value add for the board to determine the quality between our comparables, your comparables, and the subject?
It would definitely be handy for sure. Yeah.
So I guess my next question would be like, why are these are not included in your evidence today?
What we're focusing on in our package is the most salient details being size, age, proximity to the subject, and classification.
Okay, thank you. And then just so I get your position correct, I don't want to misquote you. This question is just regarding the quality of a residential home. It's up to the judgment of the assessor that is inspecting or reviewing that assessment. Is that correct?
It is.
Thank you. On page 15, again, you spoke about that year-over-year change, the 21.1%. Do you have any evidence to support that? Or any information in your evidence to support that number that either the complainant or the board could use to determine that indeed there is a 21.1% increase year over year? Because when I did do the calculation regarding the adjusted sale prices increased from the sale prices, it was higher than the 21.1%. I believe it was almost 26% off the top of my head. I did the calculation the other day. So just curious where that information is, or if you could speak to it, or.
It's not included. It's more just a statement here. But yeah, there could be certain sales deemed outliers that may have produced slightly different numbers, you know, super high or super low, possibly. I wasn't part of the process for this municipality this year, so I can't really speak to that, but yeah.
I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just to make sure we got sort of clear on the record, we're on R1, page 15. And I believe your question, Mr. Roth, was the adjusted sale price, second last column, compared to the sale price over the time period between the sale date and July 1, 22. You're suggesting the escalator is not 22%, it's something different for these properties?
I believe so. So if we take, for example, if you look at the adjusted sale price to the sale price, and you just you do a standard change and relate that to a percent, so that's old minus new divided by new, that'll give you your change year over year, or the change in the two prices here. And I believe that that's actually higher than 22.1%. So I'm just curious as to kind of what data was used behind this, and if there was data that either the property owner, another property owner that also might have their property up for an appeal, or the board to be able to determine that this in fact is statistically sound and the properties being used are appropriate. And I haven't been able to locate any of that in the evidence.
Okay, but there's one other factor. Sorry, I'm just trying to get clarity. There's one other factor, and that's, you know, some of those sale dates are a year old or less than a year old, and some of them are more than 2 years old. So you need to take that into account as well, right?
Of course. So typically the 3 year, yeah.
Okay, any other questions for the respondent?
If I may, I don't know if it's a question for the respondent. Mr. Roth questioned the lack of photos from the subject property. And I note that Mr. Roth in the complaints rebuttal does have some photos of the interior, but very few photos on pages 48, 49, 50 and 51. And if it's appropriate, could I ask Mr. Snellgrove if these photos are representative of the quality of the house? And I don't know if Mr. Roth would object to that question.
I'm fine with the question. These are photos directly from the homeowner. You know, they're not the greatest photos, I agree.
Okay,
They are the photos that the property owner has sent us. As much as I can give, as much detail as I have. and that's what I've done.
Okay.
So
I appreciate that. And I guess my question, Mr. Snellgrove, is are these photos somewhat representative of the interior of the house, the quality of it?
I have to assume so because I have not
Oh,
been
I'm
in
sorry. You
myself.
said you weren't. That's right. I apologize. I
Yep.
think my question's not appropriate in that case. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, let's move on to the complaints, rebuttal evidence, and I'll let him speak to these photos in C3 if he wishes. Please go ahead, Mr. Roth.
thank you. On, I believe it's C3, if we could begin on page 8, please. So this is our summary rebuttal. And at the top there, again, we have that requested assessment of $2,318,160, which is our initial request. And then based on the respondent's evidence, we have submitted not a new request, but an alternative request, which is $2,496,278. And I have extensive information on where that new value has come from and how it was derived. And if we could begin on point 4 on page 8, please. Altus will respond to page 19 of the respondent's evidence, specifically the average residential assessment increase of the last year. I believe you said it was a trend over 3 years, I believe. So excuse my misrepresentation of that in here, but the assessment increase statistics. Altus will use a paired sales analysis to demonstrate the local subdivision real estate market trends within Silvertip subdivision. Altus will demonstrate that the repeat sales in Silvertip subdivision between 2020 and the July 21st, 2022 valuation period shows a residential real estate market trend of 7.6% increase. Altus will present the paired sales analysis and the sales behind the analysis, including MLS listings and of the properties used in our analysis for the time adjustment that I will present shortly here. And on page 5, Altus will provide an alternative request assessed value of $2,496,278 after a time adjusting the comparable properties brought forward in our initial evidence package to the valuation date of July 1st, 2022. The time adjustment of 7.68% comes from a comparative analysis or a paired sales analysis within Silvertip subdivision of repeat sales to demonstrate the local neighborhood residential real estate market trends. After adjusting the comparable sales in our initial submission, Altus will show that the median ASR, that's assessment to sale ratio, is outside the 95 to 105% range, showing a median of 107 ASR even after adjusting for time sales or adjusting for time of the sales. And on point 6, Altus will respond to pages 15 and 17 of the respondent's evidence. Altus will bring forward exterior and interior photos of the comparable sales analysis used in our initial evidence. Altus will provide the interior and exterior quality of the subject and comparable sales in the analysis, showing the quality of each property. Altus will show that the subject is of inferior quality than the comparables brought forward while still being overassessed at $1,181 per square foot. And if we could move on to page 11, please. So again, this is our requested amounts. We have our requested assessed value, and then we have our alternative request value and the information behind those as well. So the sales we're using are on top. And you can see that we have time adjusted these, and the next page here, I'll go over how that time adjustment was done. But we can still see that even after time adjusting these sales, we're still at that 107% ASR. So the new request again, $2,496,287, which is $840 per square foot. If we could begin on page 13, please. So this is in response to page 19 of the respondent's evidence. The town of Canmore has experienced a 22.1% average residential adjustment, or excuse me, residential assessment increase over the last years using sales as far back as 2019. And if we could continue to page 15, page 15, please. This is our time adjustment of the Silvertip neighborhood. And we believe that when looking at residential trends in the real estate market, we believe that you need to take out as many of the variables as possible. And when you're looking at a municipality, whether it's Calgary, whether it's Canmore, no matter the size, each neighborhood has its own characteristics and its own residential market. A house that might sell in Silvertip will be completely different real estate market factors or market forces applied on those than another subdivision either on the other side of Canmore or in the downtown of Canmore. They're different. And so what we've done is we found repeat sales. So this is the same house selling at two different periods in time. And so why this is important that they're the same house that have repeated sales is we don't have to look at sales and say, is it the same physical quality? Is it the same construction? Does it have the same features? The lot sizes are a little bit different. These are apples to apples, oranges to oranges here. These are the same properties. So we have sale price 1. So we'll kind of go from left to right here. So we have the address of the two. And we have the subdivision both in Silvertip, which is the same as the subject. And we have sale price 1 of 3.5 and 2.75 million. And we have sale price 2. So that's the second time that it has sold. So 3.65 million and 3.45 million. And you can see the increases on the right of SP2. You can see the increase or the appreciation of those after reoccurring sales. We have the sale price 1 date and the sale price 2 date. Now, some of these are beyond the valuation. However, we're not using these as direct comparables or in our comparables for evidence. These are specifically just used as data points to come up with our time adjustment. And so between SP1 and SP1 dates, we have days between. So we have 736 days between these two sales, and we have 740 days. And if you take that increase between SP1 and SP2, and you divide it by how many days since those sales, we can see an appreciation value per day. So that's $203.80 per day and $945 or $946 per day. And we can see that the overall increase from SP1 to SP2 is 4.3% and 25.45%. Excuse me. The days SP2 overvaluation is when the sale date has occurred is beyond the valuation purposes for this assessment cycle. And the valuation date, again, July 1st, 2022. So for example, on the top row there on 501 Silvertip Point, it's 5 days over the valuation. So it's sold on July 6th, 2022. And then the second one, this 620 Silvertip Road, has sold 414 or 17 days past the valuation period. And so what we've done is we will take those negatives and apply it to the days between the sale price 1 and the sale price 2 duration. And so what we've done then is multiplied those new days up to the valuation period. So what we've done is, for example, on the top one here, between SP1 and SP2, we have 736 days between the sale prices for the top row, which means we have to take 5 days off in order to adjust it to the valuation date. So it used to be 736 days. Now it's 731. We multiply that by the value per day of the change between SP1 and SP2. And we get an increase of 4.62%. And on the second one, it's a little bit more drastic. It adjusts the increase to 11.11%. but that's because the second sale occurred much later into 2023. So 417 days later into, into the next cycle. And so after adjusting these and then looking at the change in value adjusted up into the valuation date, we can see that they've only appreciated 7.68%. And applying that median or that mean of 7.68%, again, if we could go back to page 14 for a moment. And when we apply that percentage as our time adjustment up into the valuation of July 1st, 2022, we get a adjusted ASR of 107%. So what we've done here is we've done a repeat sale analysis. We've removed all variable factors by using the same properties that have sold 2 times in a row within the last 3 years and adjusted them up until the valuation date, and then applied that to our comparative sales analysis in our initial evidence, which is where our alternative requested assessment comes from. And if we could continue to page 17, please. So in addition to the adjustment to the valuation and adjusting for time, we provided the MLS listings of the 2 sale properties that were used in our time adjustment analysis. So this is the 501 Silvertip Point, and this is the sale date, the sale price, all of the features for the property, the realtor remarks. And if we could continue on to page 20. Without producing a 1,000-page report, I have included some photos that were on the listing on MLS for the properties in the analysis that I just went through, and the board can determine the quality and the likeliness of these 2 homes that were used in our time-adjusted analysis there. And on page 23, that's the second one there, the 501 Silvertip Point. Again, the sale date, sale price, realtor remarks, features of the property. And on page 26, we have, again, smaller photos, but photos for the board to consider in terms of comparability and quality. These are very nice homes. I will say that. And then again, on page 29, this would be the sale price 2. So this is the newer or the most recent sale of the property. So the first 2 MLS listings we just went through were SP1. The next 2 MLS listings would be SP2. So this one on page 29, again, the 620 Silvertip, same property, selling again at a different date. And we can measure the trend in time of these 2 properties, which means we can see the overall real estate trend for Silvertip Point specifically, and not the overall broad stroke of Kenmore. We can get quite specific to the neighborhood here. And on page 35, the 620 Silvertip, this is SP2. And if we can continue, to page 41, please. So this is the page out of the respondent's evidence in response to this page, again, 15 and 17. It talks about quality, not the same construction type. And then again on page 42, this is page 17 of the respondent's evidence, talking about the properties provided by the complainant are all lower quality and finishes. And if we could continue to page 44, please, just a quick overview of the subject's assessment report. Again, looking at that custom and expensive, the semi-custom there. And on page 45, we're going to go for each of our properties that we brought forward at our initial submission. We're going to go over some quality photos. and we're just talking about the subject, we can see here 631 silver tip. It's a quality next to the red arrow there is considered expensive compared to the good custom and other custom properties. So on page 46, we have the same photos that we brought forward in our initial evidence, just a little bit more blown up, a little bit bigger for the board to add some more detail. Now, page 47, we have a closer up of the exterior of the back of the residence. And on page 48, we have the interior here. Then page 49, dining room area of the subject property interior. On page 50, we have, I believe, the master bathroom. And on page 51, we have some of the kitchen and a living room interior photo of the subject property as well. So regarding our first sale on page 52, that's the 133 Silvertip Ridge. We do have significant photos of these properties. So on page 54, if I may, this is the first one at 133 Silvertip Ridge. It is given a quality rating of custom. And on page 55 is a exterior frontal view of that comparable property with a brick masonry exterior. And if we could continue to page 56, this is the living room and kitchen of that comparable property. We can see the marble kitchen finish and new cabinetry, vaulted ceilings, wide open spaces. And on page 57, we have the master bathroom, and then we have, I believe, a study. And on page 58, we have a little bit of the exterior, a little bit of the view from the of the comparable property. When it comes to residential homes, location is everything. And this is why we've included some of the views from these comparable properties and including the rear of that comparable property as well. And on page 59, this is the 537 Silvertip Road. And again, on page 61, if I may, this is our second comparable, 537 Silvertip Road. This is given a good custom quality rating. And if we could continue to page 62, please. We have some exterior as well as an overhead shot of that comparable property. And on page 63, we have the entranceway and a photo of the kitchen. Again, brand new cabinetry. I believe that granite countertop. And if we could continue to page 64, we have the little bit of the kitchen, living room, and dining area, and as well as the living room as well. And if we can continue to page 65, we have the master bathroom there. And on page 66, a little bit of the patio in the back, trying to show again a little bit of the views that are you're able to see from the rear of the property here. And continuing to page 67, please. This is 613 Silvertip Road. And on page 69, again, this is the respondents, page 17, showing the quality ratings of these properties. This would be considered a good custom by the assessor. We have 70, or on page 70, we have, again, exterior photos, a little bit of an aerial photo as well of that comparable property. And on page 71, we have the entranceway and a photo of the kitchen. And on page 72, we have the living room. And on page 73, we have the master bathroom as well. And on page 74, the rear of the patio showing the views and the rear of the house as well. And then on page 75, we have a little bit of an aerial shot of the rear of the property there, just to give you both sides of the facing of the residential property. And if we can continue to page 76, please. Again, this is 808 Silvertip Heights, the MLS listing. Again, realtor remarks and features of the property. And if we could continue to page 78, please. This would be our fourth comparable property, which is given the expensive quality, the same as the assessed. So the page 79, just a quick front view of that property. And on page 80, we have the interior photos here. Both the entranceway and the kitchen. And then on page 81, we have another kitchen view from a different angle, and then also the living room here. And on page 82, we have another view of the living area, and the stairs to go upstairs, and then also the master bathroom. And on page 83, we have some living quarters and another photo of the bathroom here. On page 84, this is our 117 Stone Creek Place. This is our fifth comparable. If you look at page 86, this is given a quality of custom. And on page 87, we have a photo of the front of the property and the interior of the property. And on page 88, we have two photos of the kitchen here. And on page 89, we have a photo of the downstairs, I believe, and the bedroom upstairs. And on page 90, we have a photo of I believe these are two separate bathrooms, but these are the bathrooms that are on the comparable property. And on page 91, we have the patio on the back, just showing the rear of the property, and again, the views from that property. And so I get the whole point of bringing these photos forward and hearing, the respondent answer the question of the board referring to the quality. Quality is a judgment call. And we can see that the quality that these are given on an assessment don't reflect what's actually at the property. If I may, if we look at page 61, this would be our second comparable here. This is given a quality rating of good custom. And if we could just look at page 63, this is a much higher quality than the subject that is given an expensive quality rating. And to compare, if we look at those photos on page 63, for example, and compare them to the subject property interior on page 48, 49, 50, and 51, these are very different qualities. One has been given good custom and one has been given expensive, and that's the subject. We don't believe that the quality of rating of the subject property reflects the actual subject compared to the other sales that we've brought forward. We believe that the subject is inferior and is assessed at $1,181 per square foot, where even after time adjusting these sales, the median sale price of all of these properties that we've just gone through all the photos is $840. So, Mr. Chairman, the board, what we're asking for today is the board to consider the quality of these photos. We've provided as much detail to the board for its ability to deliberate and determine the quality of these properties, the sale price of all these properties, and the comparability. And we provide an extensive amount of detail for the board to consider, including exterior and interior photos, so that you can be as informed when you make your decision. And we believe that the two values that we've requested reflect the actual market value of the property. And on page 40 plus, or the remaining 94, to page 105. What we've done here is all of the photos that the comparable properties that we've brought forward are represented here. If I were to include all of these in a blow-up photo, this package would be over 100 gigs big, and it wouldn't be realistic. So what I've done here is to be as transparent about the quality of these comparable sales as I've brought forward every photo on the MLS listing for the board to consider in its deliberation as best that I can for the way that we present information during this process. So we do have every single photo here, including some of the ones to select the more main living areas. That's the main bathroom, the bedroom, front and back facing living room and kitchen. But there are other photos here of every comparable property that we've brought forward. And Mr. Chairman, the board, that's my presentation. Thank you for your time and welcome any questions from either the respondent or the board. Thank you.
Let's start with Ms. Ouellette.
I guess just a quick question for you, Mr. Roth. Was there basements in all of these other comparables? Earlier, we talked about, whether or not we could confirm there was an additional basement living space or not.
Some of them do have basements. And to be transparent, it will just go to page 94, if I may. We'll just run through the MLS listings of these.
And so we're on C3?
That's correct. So C3, page 94, this is the MLS listing of our first comparable. And in the middle of the page here, you can see rooms and measurements. And you can see main, upper, and below grade. So there is 117 square feet for below grade. And on page 96, this one doesn't have a basement, but it is all the information here regarding the layout of the property and the characteristics of the levels are all going to be in the same location on all these MLSs. So on page 99, we have the main and upper there, no basement, no below grade. Unfortunately, on page 102 for 808 Silvertip, doesn't provide us the realtor hasn't provided us with the measurements of the property there, unfortunately. But it does say that in the public remarks, there is a lower level that has a magnificent entry, for example. And then
we can see from the picture that that's below grade.
Yeah. And then on page 104, again, just showing to be transparent, we have the room and measurements there. We have main, upper, and below grade.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any more questions?
That's it for me.
Mr.
No
Buckley?
questions. No, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Similarly, comparing, with and without basements, I didn't hear any sort of comparison to land size. I mean, some of these are kind of half lots and some are full lots, almost 100% variation size. Do you have any comments for us to consider on land size and land value as it impacts assessment?
I mean, I think a larger plot definitely plays a role. I think with a town like Canmore, just thinking of it very quickly off the top of my head, I don't think land size plays as important as other municipalities. People live and purchase home, whether it's vacational homes or residential full-time homes in Canmore for the purposes of living in Canmore in the views. If you have a much larger lot and you don't have any views of the mountains, you don't have any views of the what all the beauty that Canmore provides, then the larger lot doesn't really benefit you here at all. You buy Canmore homes to be in the mountains and to see mountains. And if you don't have a view on a larger lot of that, the larger lot doesn't do anything for you. So in this circumstance, I don't think that lot size has anything to do with it. I think that obviously square footage of the home plays into it. People need space to live, whether they have kids or big family or they're single or whatever. That goes to the living of those purchasers or residents. But in terms of land size, I don't think it has as impactful of a meaningful impactful as it would in other locations, in my opinion.
Great, thank you for that. I have a couple more questions. I heard you make one comment about, the quality of one of the homes being substantially greater than 631 Silvertip. And would you agree with me that if another home is underassessed, that is not justification to adjust the value of 631 as being overassessed in the regulatory scheme we have in Alberta?
I would agree.
Thank you. And when you were providing the comparison of the two sales to come up with your sort of 7.68%, and that's a per year number adjusted?
That would be a time adjustment from 2020 up in, or so month 6, 30th day on the 2020 up until the valuation date. So it would be from 2020 to July 1st, 2022. It starts at SP, or the 50 Silvertip Point is the oldest sale date of those two. So that would be the beginning, and then the valuation would be the end. So that's the appreciation time frame that we've used here.
Okay. Can we go to that table again, please?
Yeah, page 15.
Thank you. Yeah, so at the end, you have an 11. Let's look at 620 Silvertip Road as a 11.11%. And so that's the difference between SP1 and
the valuation date.
June 30th or June 30th, July 1st of 20.
June 30th, July 1st. Yeah. We use July 1st to be transparent, but yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But those are two pretty marked differences between these two properties. I mean, 4%, 11%, and a sample set of 2. Any thoughts on that? Like, and you provided the pictures, so I assume you're not suggesting that one of them was improved and one of them wasn't.
No, so
dynamics.
That's correct. So when looking at these two properties, looking at the MLS listing for SP1 and SP2, specifically read through the realtor remarks to see if there's any kind of renovation or any kind of improvements done to the property, and there were none mentioned as far as I'm aware. And in terms of there only being two, I agree. It is a small sample size. However, when looking at the town of Canmore as a whole, you're weighing in Silvertip plus every other part of the municipality. And so when you look at the overall municipality and then use that value to apply it to Silvertip, that's an overwhelming force being applied to Silvertip. Silvertip's contribution to that statistic is very small comparative to the rest of the municipality affecting Silvertip. Whereas what we've done here is we've narrowed our scope to be specific to the neighborhood that the subject is in. And then also by using repeat sales of the same property, we remove all variability that could happen in a study that could cause any kind of accuracy issues, or could come up with there might be a standard error rate that could be applied when you're looking at the whole municipality. But when we're looking just at the neighborhood and applying the neighborhood's trend to the subject in that neighborhood, we believe that although there's only 2 data points, this way it removes a lot of the question of, for example, maybe downtown Canmore had a massive increase this year, but every other part of the municipality in Canmore has seen a similar result as 7.68%. But because the downtown residential area is carrying the municipality, it's not fair for a trend to be applied to Silvertip or to the subject just because the downtown, for example, is doing good. And because I don't have the information for that, and the information wasn't provided by the respondent, I'm not able to determine where any of the percentage for trends that come from that 22.1 or the 26% or whatever it was in the respondent's evidence. Whereas here I'm able to know where all the values came from, how they were derived, and that I can see that all of the variability has been removed because we're using repeat sales in the subject's own neighborhood.
Okay, thank you for that. But I just want to be clear in my own mind that if we look at 501 Silvertip Point, it is essentially, you're saying it's a 4.3% increase from June 30th of 20 until June 30th of 22.
That's correct. July 1st, but that's correct.
Sure. Okay. So it basically little, 2.1% per year. And if we look at 620 Silvertip, it's from July or August 12th of 21 to July 1st of 22. So 11 months and an 11% increase.
That's correct. So
my question is, on an annual basis, I have a 5 times difference between these two properties on sort of a 1 year annual increase. So I guess it's a significant variation between these two on a sample set of 2.
I agree. And the problem we're faced here is the approach that we took. Again, same sales, reselling that are in the neighborhood of the subject property, so that we can, again, compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. This is the best way that can be done, because we're comparing the same property that sold once to the next sale of that same property, right? There's no question about the comparability of these properties because it's the same one, right? And if I were to have more repeat sales within that 3 year from the valuation, I would have included them. But these are the only ones that repeated, that were within that 3 years back from the valuation date all the way back 3 years, that had sold again. Because if this doesn't work, if the sale is past the valuation date, because that would mean that market trend analysis would be for quote unquote the 2024 tax season, that right? So, and if I were to exclude the expensive one, then I'm nitpicking. If I were to exclude the less one, then again, I'm nitpicking. So the way that we've done an analysis, this is the best way that we feel to assess the residential market trend within the neighborhood of the subject. And we've included all the information that we can and all that we could find. So,
Yeah, sorry, I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just trying to understand.
yeah, of course.
Understand the methodology that you've applied, and we'll certainly take that into consideration. So my last question is back to page 92 of our C3 for your comparables, and I appreciate the work you've done to try and categorize these homes around quality, because I think that's sort of a key issue here for us to consider. But when I look at these 5 homes, it kind of jumps out at me that there's really, we are comparing maybe apples and oranges here, that 133 Silvertip and 117 Stone Creek, appear to be in one category with a price per square foot in the 600s, and the other 3 are 25-30% higher. Any sort of final thoughts on that, or just should we look at the evidence you've presented in the pictures and come to our own conclusions?
Yeah, in terms of the variability, and talking about quality, part of the reason why we are making quality such a big issue is that we feel that that based off the assessment, not only is the assessment or the subject property of a lesser quality, not to all of our comparables, but to most, we're assessed at $1,000, $181 per square foot. And some of these properties, in terms of their quality, have sold for much less per square foot, even after time adjustment that we've applied. So in terms of the variability, we're trying to, again, be as transparent as possible about what has been sold and what we feel is comparable to the property. And we feel that these are either the most comparable, and we are either, in terms of quality rating, over quality assessed, and then compared to some of these. And then when we look at some of these that have a lower quality rating that have sold for less in their exterior and interior photo, it shows that the quality rating on the subject property it seems to be, again, and the judgment call of the assessor seems the judgment call on the day was, in my opinion, not the correct one.
Great, thank you. Any follow-up questions from the board?
Not from me, thank you.
Mr. Snellgrove, do you have some questions for Mr. Roth?
I do, thank you. Excuse me. If we could just return to page 15, the paired sale analysis, please.
Thank you. So,
Stefan, the question I have here is the sales on the SP2 date, would you say they are falling within the legislated time frame for allowable analysis for this assessment period?
So I would agree that SP2 sale date is past that valuation date. I agree. However, we have adjusted them to a value per day of appreciation. And then we found out the difference in day between the SP2 and the valuation date of July 1st, 2022, which again is that 731 days and 323 days. And then you multiply that by the value gained per day, and we can find the appreciation of the property from its SP1 date to the valuation date. And the assumption is that it would be a linear line of appreciation. But in order to find out what the actual appreciation, I don't think that that's quite possible statistically, but that's what we've done here. And because we're not using these as comparables in our requested value, we don't believe that these are considered quote unquote post facto, right? So.
Okay. And you're applying the same weight to each day that you apply that adjustment to, regardless of time of year.
That's correct. So in the top one, although sold 2020 and then you have 2021, the weight are equal to those. But and the reason why the weight are equal is we have stuck to that, quote unquote standard 3-year previous sale history. This isn't a sale from 5 or 6 years ago. And if it was, we would apply a lesser weight to it.
Okay, thank you. And this was the only analysis done to try to gauge the time adjustment for this subject property. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's the only time adjustment that we have.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have right now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. We will now move on to argument and summation. And I'd like to ask Mr. Roth to start that process, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the comparable properties and trying to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, which I think is, I agree with the respondent, is the proper way to do things. Reviewing the photos and extensive detailed photos of our comparable properties brought forward, being as transparent as possible in terms of the features and characteristics of the property of the MLS listing and the interior and exterior photos, and then compared that with the interior photos and exterior photos of the subject property, while being assessed at close to $1,200 per square feet. We believe that the assessed the subject is overassessed. With the comparables brought forward, we believe some of them are of nicer quality or the same quality, and none of them have sold, or even after time adjustment have sold anywhere near the $1,000 per square foot remark, whereas we're assessed at near $1,200 per square feet. And so I would ask the board to really review the photos and the documentation of each of the comparable properties that have brought forward for our comparables, because when I look at the respondents' comparables in the evidence, I don't have any photos, interior photos. I don't have any features of these. I just have the assessment summary front page, which shows a subjective on-the-day judgment call by the assessor for the quality rating of it. And then an assessment is determined by that. And in the case of our subject property today, in our opinion, we believe that the quality that was given on the day is incorrect, especially when compared to the comparable properties that we brought forward were either the same or inferior. We're assessed at, again, $1,200 per square feet versus the $870 after time adjustment. And we believe that the assessment should be reduced. And again, we are asking for the initial requested value of $2,318,160, or we presented an alternative requested amount after doing a time adjustment, which is unique to the subject's neighborhood, and using repeat sales of properties in that neighborhood, we have removed all variability when it comes to trying to measure market trends over time. And so we believe that either these two representations of, either these two requested values represent the property more in terms of market value than the assessment. And that would, and again, board members, Mr. Chairman, our request value today is $2,318,160, and our time adjusted alternative request is $2,496,278, a range between $780 and $840 per square foot compared to the currently assessed $1,181 per square feet. Thank you for your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Snellgrove, you please provide us with your summation and argument.
Thank you very much. So in regards to the rebuttal, page 15, sales time adjustment analysis done by the complainant, what we have here is 2 sales only in this neighborhood, which can be used in a single appraisal setting. You know, you have a little bit, you're not restricted by the dates like we are in assessment, even though they have adjusted for that date backwards. Both of those resales occurred after the time frame. So in an assessment setting, they would not be included for analysis. We would not be held to that standard by the province. Furthermore, I've once heard time adjustment explained as though if you have 2 elastic bands and you put a lot of weight on them, they could snap rather easily. But when you have all of the elastic bands, which would include all resales within the town of Canmore, we have to use all of the sales when we do our time adjustment to create, to measure what the regional trend is doing. I've had auditors tell me not to apply it to specific neighborhoods, but rather to use the overall trend for the entire municipality. So these are some of the challenges we face in assessment. I think the sale prices on a situational, locational, neighborhood basis do speak for themselves. But when you measure all those sales from the beginning of the period to the end, we have a very strong indication of what occurs over that 3-year trend. And that's where our time adjustment has come from. So I don't really think that this is an accurate depiction of what inflation has occurred over that 3-year period. It's just kind of cherry picking this neighborhood specifically and ignoring the entire municipality, which is what the audit holds us to do. So I don't think any weight should be put onto this in their analysis, because it's not to the same extent that the same standards that we're held to. Also, in regards to the photographs of the subject property and in light of the comparables, there was no photographs showing the kitchen area of the subject property. There's only a few pictures shown in dim lighting, you know, in comparison to the realtor photos, which are jazzed up for sales purposes. You know, so the best thing we can go by is the assessor that did a site inspection deemed that was the quality rating for the property. And if there was some room to move on that, they would have done so at the time of inspection or in conversation with the ratepayer during the analysis or inquiry period. So if we could look again at the comparables in the respondent disclosure R1, page 15, I'd just like to reiterate, all of these sales are within that legislated time frame. They are 2 stories with basements and homes. The unit of comparison here is the lot size and the floor area, the ages of the structures, and then the adjusted sale price from there. All of these comparables are fairly strong. These rates are specific to 2-story homes with basements. Some of the comparables provided were not 2-story homes with basements, some were. The quality ratings may be inaccurate for some of the comparables as well, you know, but what we have to go by is the way it's been called for now, based on the information that's in front of us right now. So ultimately, these 4 sales comparisons are very good indications of value. They do meet the standards that the province subjects us to. It passed audit. We get audited every year Otherwise, we have to redo the assessment. We have to submit it to the province by the end of February every year. And if it doesn't meet those criteria, they get back to us right away, and we have to keep working on it. So, you know, it meets the provincial standards. And based on these 4 comparables of 2 stories and basements with homes in the same neighborhood, this valuation is both fair and equitable. And that's really what this boils down to, is we want to be as fair as possible. The point of assessment is to create a common measuring stick by which people are taxed. And the units of comparison here are size, the location, the age, and you can tell by those adjusted sale prices that our assessed value falls within that range. And that's really my final statement here. We do hope that the board will uphold the assessment based on this information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snellgrove. I appreciate that. And final word to you, Mr. Roth. Anything arising from the respondent's summation or argument you wish to speak to?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with regards to our time adjustment method, you know, if I'm looking to buy a house in Calgary and I'm looking in the south of Calgary, I'm not going to look at the market trend analysis and allow that to apply weight to, you know, this when I'm purchasing a house in South Calgary, or if I'm assessing the house in South Calgary, because they're vastly different neighborhoods. Again, residential real estate is all about location, location, location. And what we've done here is a location specific time adjustment for market trends. For all we know, in terms of the assessor's way of calculating the residential market trends in Canmore, I don't know how the weights were applied. I don't know what properties were used. I don't know the calculations behind it. These are not in evidence. And it's impossible for the taxpayer, any taxpayer, myself or the board included, to determine if this indeed it should be applied in terms of a growth year over year, or since 2019 to 2021 or 2022. It's difficult to say because there's no evidence here. Whereas the information that we've brought forward is clear, concise. We've shown clear evidence of the fact that there is only a 7.68% appreciation, and whether or not these are post facto is irrelevant because we're not using them in our determination of our requested value. These are just showing market appreciation over time and using them to apply that to the comparables. And then in terms of interior photos being dressed up, I mean, I can agree to that they're definitely going to be cleaner. They're definitely going to be brighter, but you can't clean up granite countertop kitchens. You can't clean up views that some of these properties have. You can't clean up the interior vaulted ceilings that these have, the nice hardwood floors. You can't necessarily just clean these up. These are the physical characteristics of the property. They're much higher quality than the subject. And in terms of the quality that we have now has to be used for now, I don't think that that's quite agreeable. I totally disagree with the quality of the subject, especially when you have clear evidence in photos of sales that have occurred that have a good custom. I don't know how these are determined, and apparently they're on the judgment of the assessor on the day of them reviewing that. So to me, it's a bit confusing. I'm not quite sure where the expensive has come from in terms of the quality rating of the subject, but for me, I think it's extremely important to consider the quality instead of just leaving the quality as it is now. And at the end of the day, the real question is, when looking at our comparables, is the subject property worth $341 more than our alternative requested medium sale price dollar per square foot? We are assessed at $1,181 per square foot. The comparables we brought forward after time adjustment is $870, I believe. That's $341 more for the RS subject than our comparable properties. And that is the main question that I believe we're here today. Is the subject worth $341 more than the comparables that we've brought forward? Thank you for your time. Thank you to the board members and Mr. Chairman for allowing us to present our evidence today. Very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, for your cooperation and very helpful presentations. And we appreciate the great answers to our queries as well. At this time, I would like to ask the parties if they felt that they have been heard today and if they feel that they've received a fair hearing. Mr. Roth?
On behalf of the complainant, yes.
Mr. Snellgrove?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Awesome. I will now declare the hearing closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. And I thank you, gentlemen, for your time today and wish you a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you on behalf of the respondent for their presentation as